Wow, thank you all. Thank you, Dan. Wow, look at this crowd. I don't think there's any space left. It is truly, truly an honor to be here at the City Club of Chicago. Thank you for hosting us today, Omar, Dan, and for being one of the most important civic institutions in our city and our state. You guys do a remarkable job. Can we give them a round of applause, please? The City Club really has been it has been a place where big ideas are tested, where leaders are challenged, and where democracy is taken seriously. Not as a slogan, but as a responsibility. I am truly honored to be here, and I'm humbled by the extraordinary interest in today's conversation. People have been calling for weeks saying, how do I get in? How do I get in? I'm told by Dan that the waiting list to attend today's luncheon is the second longest in the City Club history. Second only, there's this guy named Donald Trump. He spoke here a few years ago, and I guess he still has the longest. Is that right, Dan? According to him? I like that. But let me tell you, that fact alone tells us something very important. It really does. It tells us that this moment that we're in right now really does matter. It tells us that democracy matters. And it tells us that people are hungry, not for chaos or spectacle, but for clarity, for truth, and for real leadership. Because today is not just another date on the calendar, as some people would like it to be. It's not just another day anymore. Today is January 6th. 5 years ago on this very day, our nation watched in disbelief as a violent mob, incited by a sitting United States president, stormed the United States Capitol in an effort to overturn a free and fair election. They attacked police officers. They desecrated the halls of the United States Congress. They threatened elected officials. They carried guns into the Capitol. They carried bear spray into the Capitol. They had zip ties with them. And they sought to apprehend and perhaps even execute the Vice President of the United States because he refused to abuse his office. And they attempted to stop the peaceful transfer of power for the first time in American history. January 6, 2021 was not just a riot. Media, please stop reporting it as a riot. It was not just a protest that got out of hand. It was an insurrection against democracy itself. And let me repeat that. It was an insurrection against democracy itself. And 5 years later, we are still living with its consequences. So today, in this room, Madam President Breckwinkle, in this city, Justice Cunningham, at this moment in history, we must ask ourselves a very serious question. What are we going to do about it? What are we all going to do about it? This room full of influential leaders. Let me make a suggestion, and it'll be my point for today. That we all play an infinite game to preserve democracy. We all must play an infinite game to preserve democracy. Because preserving our democracy is not a one-day event. It's not a single election. It's more than this midterm that's coming up. It is not the responsibility of one party or one generation. Preserving democracy is what Simon Sinek calls an infinite game. Those folks over there are chuckling a little bit because they hear me talk about it all the time. I go back to it time and time again. In this book, The Infinite Game, Sinan explains that there are two types of games in life. Finite games have known players, fixed rules, and a clear endpoint. At the end of a finite game, there is a winner and a loser. Everyone is going to be tuned in Saturday night at 7 o'clock for a finite game between the Bears and the Packers. And we hope at the end of that finite game, the Bears are the winners. Some of y'all might be quietly rooting for that other team. But our finite mindset said the Bears are going to win on Saturday night. But infinite games are very different than what we're going to see Saturday night. They have changing players, the rules evolve, and the goal is not to win, but to keep playing in perpetuity, to go on and on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, democracy is the ultimate infinite game. I couldn't be here today on January 6th and not talk about the ultimate infinite game. There is no finish line. There is no final victory. There is only the ongoing work of preserving, strengthening, and renewing it, generation after generation. January 6th happened because too many people, especially those in positions of power, particularly one person in particular in power, decided to treat democracy like a finite game. They believed that if they lost, the game was over. They believed that power was something to be seized, not stewarded. They believed that the rules only mattered when they were winning. And when that thinking takes hold, everyone, when that thinking takes hold, democracy is in danger. When that thinking takes hold, we're in trouble. Because democracy cannot survive if we only believe in it when it benefits us. The truth is this: democracy has always been fragile. Always. And we always have to fight for it. It survived the Civil War. It survived the Great Depression. It survived world wars, political assassinations, and social upheaval. And let's remember this about January 6th, 5 years ago. When the smoke cleared and peace was restored to the Capitol that day, the vast majority of the leaders in that building, including Donald Trump's own vice president, sided with democracy. And they should be commended for playing the infinite game. Additionally, when President Trump won election in 2024, we were reminded what a peaceful transition of power looked like and what an infinite game mindset should look like. But that choice between democracy and tyranny, between the rule of law and the whims of a strong man, is a choice we need to make every single day. And more, what we're seeing is that it is a choice many leaders would turn away from rather than face head on. That's not leadership. Democracy only survives because of ordinary people. Public servants, activists, voters, and yes, elected officials. We have to choose to keep playing an infinite game. And on January 6th, a lot of them did that, including Vice President Pence. They chose country over party. They chose principle over power. They chose democracy over demagoguery. And now, 5 years later, here on January 6th, it's our turn. It's our turn to make that choice. Look, I actually have no doubt that some people will hear my words here today and say, so what? They will insist that we're talking about the past and not the future. Actually, go look at my state Facebook page from yesterday and some of the comments, if you can stomach it. They want us to stop talking about the past. It never happened. And that's where they're wrong. We're not going to stop talking about it because the finite mindset that led to the dark day is still the cloud that hangs over so much of our civic lives today. That finite mindset has families paying more for groceries because a president believes he has the power to unilaterally impose tariffs on everything. And Congress, whether out of acquiescence, fear, or political expediency, chooses to look the other way. That finite mindset is driving health insurance premiums through the roof as we speak, all because some in Washington believe that forcing people to choose between their health care and their homes is better than letting the other side actually get a victory or take credit. That's a finite mindset. We can see time and time again the cost when leaders forget that our democracy calls on them to always play with an infinite mindset in an infinite game. Here in Illinois, I'm really proud that we understand something fundamental about our democracy. I'm really proud to work with these folks on my right every single day. I love watching each and every one of them work. We understand that democracy is not self-executing. It requires laws that protect the right to vote. It requires institutions that respect the rule of law. And it requires leaders who are willing to defend democracy, even when it's inconvenient or even when it's unpopular. That is why in Illinois, we have taken real steps to strengthen our democratic institutions. No matter what that guy says in Washington, we have expanded access to the ballot. And we're going to protect our voting data. We have protected voters from intimidation. We have stood up for the separation of powers, and we have made it clear again and again that no one is above the law. No one. But democracy is not about strong men. It's about strong institutions. That's what democracy is about, Pastor. Strong institutions. And institutions only remain strong when people believe in them. January 6th did something very dangerous. It planted a lot of doubt. Doubt about elections, doubt about truth, doubt about whether democracy is even worth defending. Some people really believe it's not worth defending. And that doubt did not disappear when the Capitol was cleared. It lingered, it spread, and in some corners it nurtured and was weaponized. That is why 5 years later, we cannot afford complacency. Democracy does not collapse all at once. It erodes slowly when lies go unchallenged, when norms are ignored, and when people stop believing that their voices matter. And here is the very hard truth that we all must confront. The greatest threat to democracy is not just violence. The greatest threat to democracy is not just violence. It's indifference. It's indifference. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. People need to go vote. Donald Trump got elected by the lowest margin in presidential history in 2024 because people did not go vote. The greatest threat to democracy is not just violence, it is indifference. It is the belief that what happened on January 6th was just politics. It is the belief that democracy will somehow take care of itself. It is the belief that the infinite game can be paused or ignored. The infinite game does not wait. Let me tell y'all that. Infinite game does not wait. If we stop playing, someone else is going to keep playing. Keep that in mind. So what does it mean practically to commit ourselves to the infinite game to preserve our democracy? I got 4 things that I'm going to suggest to you, and then I'll take my seat, Dan. 4 things. First, it means telling the truth, especially when the truth is uncomfortable. That's a clap point. And here's the truth. January 6th was wrong. It was illegal. And it was incited by a sitting president who refused to accept the results of an election and who believed that if he could not control the institutions of our government, he would just tear them down. That's the truth. That is not partisan. That is factual. Ask Grunk, who started the insurrection? And Grunk should say, Donald Trump. Democracy requires a shared commitment to the truth, because without truth, there can be no trust. And without trust, democracy collapses. That was just my first point. Second, playing the infinite game means strengthening guardrails, not tearing them down. We need to allow our courts to be the courts. We need to have free and fair elections. We need to respect a free press. We need to allow 60 Minutes to run their stories. We need an independent legislature that is a check on the executive branch when necessary. We have a House, we have a Senate, we have a governor. We all are a check on each other when necessary. These are not obstacles to power. They are the very things that make democracy possible. In Illinois, we believe that disagreement is healthy, but destabilization is not. We can argue fiercely and still respect the rules. We can lose elections and still respect the outcome. And we can demand change without burning the system to the ground. We might pass a law, and the Supreme Court might say, you guys got it wrong. They've done that. Justice Cunningham is still my friend. I'm not trying to burn her down. We respect our institutions. That is the mature thing to do. That's what mature democracies do. That was my second point. Third, there's a couple Baptist preachers in here. They know what I'm doing. Third, playing the infinite game means investing in the next generation. Investing in the next generation. Democracy cannot survive if young people believe it has nothing to offer them. I've been doing these town hall meetings and barbershop conversations and going around talking to people, and why should I vote? Doesn't matter. We have to make sure they understand that it does. What do we have to offer them? That means we have to offer them civic education. That means we have to offer them real economic opportunity. That means showing through our actions, not just words, that government can still be a force for good in people's lives. People will doubt what you say, but they believe what you do. When democracy delivers, people defend it. Let me repeat that. When democracy delivers, people will defend it. When people feel like they're paying a reasonable amount for their homes, healthcare, and groceries, people will defend democracy. When they feel like politicians understand their everyday struggles, people will defend democracy. And when people feel as if they're being rightly represented and the institutions of government are actually protecting them, you know what they're going to do? They're going to defend democracy. They will defend it. We have to give them reason to defend it. Fourth and finally, I'm closing. Playing the infinite game means leadership. It means leadership. Not leadership that seeks attention, but leadership that seeks stability. Not leadership that inflames 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning on social media, intentionally inflaming, but leadership that reassures. Not leadership that asks, how do I win? But leadership that asks, how do we endure? How do we endure, Alderman Curtis? How do we endure? 5 years ago, we saw what happens when leaders abandon that responsibility. Today, in this room, we must recommit to that because democracy is not guaranteed. It's not. It is not inherited permanently. It is not. It is borrowed from the future, and we are responsible for returning it stronger than how we found it. That's the infinite game. And let me be clear. The goal is not to defeat one person or one movement. We don't want to get rid of this president and have another one just like him. The goal is to ensure that 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, Americans are still arguing passionately but peacefully. Let them argue, but peacefully. They should be able to do that about the future of this country and the direction we should head in. That's what democracy is. The goal is to make sure that no matter who wins an election, the system itself wins. 5 years after January 6th, the question before us is simple. Will we learn from that moment, or will we repeat it? Will we treat democracy as a tool to be used, or a promise to be kept? Here in Chicago, here in Illinois, here at the City Club, Dan, let us choose the infinite game. Let us choose courage over fear, truth over lies, democracy over chaos. Because if we keep playing, if we keep believing, democracy will endure for generations and generations to come. Thank you all for allowing me to say it.